Have you ever sewn two pillows together? Well, I have. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It has been a whole month. The whole month of August flew by, and even though I had all these intentions of putting out videos, I did not put out one single video. We had a lot of things going on in the month of August. We've been really just working really hard on finishing our front porch. It still isn't quite finished. There are a couple odds and end jobs that need to be finished so that we can call it complete, but for the most part the bulk of it is done. So that's where most of my time went. So along with that, we are also starting our first year homeschooling. There's a fly. So it's a balancing act that I'm having to learn about how to give time to do what I want to do, along with making sure my kids are learning everything that they need to learn, and actually learning that stuff myself. That way I can teach it the way that I feel like it's appropriate for them. Because the main reason why we did homeschooling this year is because they are a little bit behind in their reading skills. And the best way to do that is, or to increase reading, fly, go away. The best way to increase it, oh my God. The best way to increase reading skills is just to practice and do it all the time, and that is one of the things that I've really just made them do. They hate it right now, but the more they do it, the more they're going to learn that they love it, and it's really not as hard as what you think it should be. Go! My Lord! The audacity of that fly. This week's video, we are going to be making the Boo costume from Monsters Inc. It is her Monsters costume. We are making it for our little 1-year-old who will be 2 in December. I am a novice sewer. I have only followed 2 patterns in my life and completed 2 projects where patterns were concerned. This does not have any patterns. I am strictly going off of what I think will work, and I want you guys to be there with me throughout that process, and you could possibly make it for yourself. So with that being said, let's just get on right into the video. I knew starting off that I wanted to segment this into 4 different sections. I didn't know this, but did you know that your arms and your shoulders don't extend as one piece? Because that's what I drew entirely. I also knew that I needed to create this wire headpiece to kind of help hold its shape. In my head, the best way for me to accurately get the measurement to my child is to lay her down and measure her out. Of course, this came with me adjusting things. It also came with it not being accurate for my size. I should have expanded this a lot further. We will see why later. As you can tell, I am adding extra, trying to make sure that I do have some sewing room there. But even though I added that extra space, it was far from enough. In order to get each piece as symmetrical as possible, I did end up folding the fabric in half. I should have folded 4 pieces of fabric on top of each other. That way I didn't have to recut the other half, but I did 2 pieces and then I went back and did the other 2. Thankfully, I was smart enough to extend each one of these pieces. I went about halfway between each of the following pieces, and then I added these little tabs so that I can make sure whenever I did sew them, they would line up where I wanted them to line up. Pro tip number 1, make sure your little tooth thing is down before you sew. At this point, I am just sewing 2 pieces together at a time. I am leaving a small hole so I can stuff it with stuffing, and I will go back and sew that later. And I chose to sew it whenever I was sewing the pieces together. That way I didn't have to hand stitch it. I looked online for quite a while for fabric that I could find that had scale-like patterns in it, and none of the patterns that I found were actually what I wanted. So instead of me spending $10 a yard on some scaly looking fabric, I instead decided to go with a more homemade kind of look. I just bought simple $4 a yard fabric and bought 2 yards of it, and that's how I made this. And I just decided I was going to take purple paint and paint diamonds or scales onto the fabric instead. There was a lot of trial and frustration with me doing this, but I did end up learning that as long as I box these out in a grid kind of form, a slanted grid kind of form, it did end up looking pretty good in the long run. Again, this didn't really have to be perfect because scales are like fingerprints and they don't have to be perfect either. So I just ended up taking some of that black paint and mixing it in with the purple just to create a shading around each of the scales to give it some sort of dimension. It looks really good from far away. Up close, you can kind of see imperfections, but you know what? It's homemade and I love it. Okay, guys. Positive thing is I've got the scale little prints put on there. Negative thing is I did not account for the space that would be took up by the cotton whenever I did this. So this is the neck hole, which I wasn't going to sew together because I'm going to have to do some kind of pin situation, because first of all, her head's not going to fit through that hole, but second of all, since I didn't account for this, for the cotton taking up so much space, this is all the space that she has inside of there. So I am going to add a strip from here to here for her shoulders, and then for each of these I'm going to do a strip all the way down from under the arm all the way down, probably about this thick on both sides. So that's adding a good 6 inches to it in thickness. Part of the purpose of using no pattern and being a novice at sewing. So this is my let's figure it out phase. So let's do it. Okay, so I have it pieced together on one side. I do have to hand stitch right here, a little hole that I missed. I tried going back over it with the sewing machine, but that is such a hassle with all of this stuffing inside of it. But I would fold them, so this is facing up. I would fold them like this and push all the stuffing as far as I could the opposite way, and then I pinned them together across here and I sewed it. So hard, so frustrating, but I'm gonna go do the other half now and then we'll see if it fits. Have you ever sewn 2 pillows together? Well, I have. Or at least that's what it felt like. So here we go. We have it. I have not put in the arm strap yet to make it a little bit longer, because just like the width of it, the length of it also shrunk. So instead of it going almost to her feet, it comes about mid-calf. If I lengthen this out to where these are like right here on her shoulders or chest instead of way up here. But I'm pretty proud of it. I think it turned out pretty okay. It looks really cute on her, but it's front, side, back, and side. So I started the arms, the tentacles. As you can see, I just sewed 2 pieces together. Let's see if I can open it. So I just sewed 2 pieces together in like a triangle-like shape. What I'm gonna do is, this is what it would look like flipped out. But I have all these, multi-dimensional size rings. What I'm going to do is hot glue them onto one side and then flip it. And then reach in there and hopefully add some more hot glue so that I can really seam it around each tentacle ring. This was probably one of my favorite parts of doing this project. I would notate that the clay that I was using, it was melting as I was putting the hot glue on it, so it did run through the fabric a little bit, which was why I chose a white fabric, because I had anticipated that happening. Hot gluing the insides was a little bit difficult. I did happen to miss one ring in both of the arms. I went back on one of them and tried to fix it, and decided that the other one was just going to be as it was, and I wasn't going to fix it. So once I had finished all the rings, I decided that the dimension wasn't enough for me. That's why I went back with a darker gray paint than the fabric, and I darkened around the underneath of the top of the ring and then the underneath of the bottom of the ring, just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. That way if you're further away, you can actually see that there's rings there and not wonder, you know, if that was just a crinkle in the fabric. So I have what's going to be the hood. Alright, so this is the hood. When it started, it kind of looked like this. I made this wire, I put it on the back of a mixing bowl, and I just kind of wired it around. You can see that all these pieces, and then I hot glue the edges so that they would, one, stay together, and two, wouldn't be so jabby. So I have this piece, which is going to be a little bit smaller, and then I have this one that I've already sewn. So I only did 4 pieces on this one. This one actually has 6 to it. So this is going to be the outer piece, and this one is going to be the inner piece with the wiring in between it with a little bit of stuffing. And this started out as a square, and I just draped the fabric over it and pinned it. I folded it along those lines. So this is the outer. Started here, sewed it around, had a curved line all the way through the middle. So I'm going to do the exact same thing for the middle, but before I do that, I'm going to take this yarn and attach it to the top for all the little hair pieces. And I have these little eyeballs that I'm going to paint black pupils on and stick some dowels through it, and hopefully I can make this work, because this is what my wife brought home to me. I was expecting something a little bit bigger, but I got these tiny little things. We'll see. We'll see. I'll make it work. Alright, so I'm going to do that real quick and get back to you. So I do have the completed product, yay! Things that I wish went better for this is the stability of the eyeballs. Just figuring out another way that I could have done that. Maybe if I had took some pipe cleaners, you know, and wrapped around it all the way down and then wrapped around the wire, maybe it would be less wiggly. But her eyeballs in the show are kind of wiggly. I did end up, because I could not get this to stay on her head, I did end up adding a lift right here, a pouch in the back. The hat was initially just attached to the shoulders, so I did add that extension to it, so maybe it will stay on her head. I have not tried it on her since. I don't want to tackle that beast again. She is, oh, can you even see me? She is pretty determined in how she feels about things, and right now, if it wasn't for the fact that we were outside, she would not have wanted to be in this. Another thing that I did do after the video was shot with her inside of it is I did end up sewing these down into place. That way I wasn't having to correct them every time she dropped her hat backwards. And whenever her hat's upside down, it kind of keeps it stagnant. And it makes, whenever you flop it back over, a lot simpler to deal with. So the back pieces I just sewed around the top. The front pieces I sewed more so around the bottoms. of them in most of the pieces. See, like this one. Just because I wanted them to be placed right there and nowhere else. I also wish that I did add the extra length that I needed instead of having this fabric on the sides. I do know that it works, but it's more like a box now that I have that on the side instead of a round material. It's okay, it works, I like it, but if I could go back and change anything, I would extend both sides out about 4 inches on both sides. Hope you guys try to make one yourself. Thank you guys for watching and stay tuned for next week.